This is Brett Mellor, and this is my artificial birdhouse, which was inspired by Marcel Duchamp. This video is an exercise of understanding designers and their philosophy by applying that philosophy to another object, like a birdhouse. Because designers are not just here to make pretty things. Designers have an underlying philosophy that they work within. This philosophy is typically based on a passion, a rejection of thought, or seeing a need in the world that they're going to fill. One such designer is Marcel Duchamp, who is part of a group called Dada. Dada was a movement in Europe that rejected negatively to the horrors of World War I. They rejected reason and logic, prized nonsense, and irrational and intuition. Marcel Duchamp is very famous for his ready-made pieces. It is an antidote for what he called retinal art. As you can see are some examples of the ready-mades he created to display and elicit certain emotions from his viewers. Many ready-mades have been created since the days of Duchamp. These ready-mades are defined as an ordinary manufactured object that is taken and either repositioned, joined, or signed or put to a different use by the designer. So what does this tell us about Marcel Duchamp's philosophy? His most famous and impactful piece is a toilet, which is called The Fountain. When he entered this into an art exhibit, people reacted very negatively to it. But its impact comes from what was questioned. What is art? Art was no longer beautiful things. His goal in his pieces was to refocus the viewer's thoughts on the idea, or simply the principle that it carried, because before that point, beautiful things were viewed as art, but now they became very thoughtful and invoking emotions in the viewer. So that experience no longer just happened from what you were seeing, the great visuals that were portrayed in the piece. That experience now is also inside of you, the thoughts that it provokes, the satire and the questions upon our society or products that we use. I wanted to apply this philosophy as I introduce this next slide. If I were to ask you what this is, this icon I'm sure would not take you very long to understand and to relate with very quickly. We have a very general view and sense of what a birdhouse will and should look like. Because as we look at birdhouses, they have a very stereotypical peg for the bird to land on, an opening, a very humanistic looking structure to it that we provide for birds. But why are we even buying birdhouses for birds? I guarantee it's not in reaction to an epidemic of homeless birds. People who buy birdhouses want birds close to them. They want them in their yard. So to facilitate that, they purchase a birdhouse. But if I apply an analogy to that, someone we want close to us to visit when we want and at our convenience, and we're providing that accommodation, that's the same idea as a rest home. So I wanted to use this philosophy of Duchamp to question, are these accommodations really what they want? And why does it look the way that it does? So in my exploration, I wanted to find a ready-made object that provided those similar kind of accommodations. A hole to where the bird could enter in through, a larger area where the bird could build its nest, but also an object that would evoke a reaction or emotion in the person purchasing it. Would I really even want that in my yard? How do I hang that? Are these accommodations exactly what the bird needs? But even deeper is, why am I putting human needs on what the needs are for a bird? So now let me introduce you to my artificial birdhouse. I chose an artificial heart for a couple reasons. One, it's something very essential for us as our human needs, but it's also not a very literal translation of a house. But also, it provides those essential needs that a bird has: an opening that it could enter into, a larger open space for the bird to build its nest, and areas to exit out of. But I also included on that, referencing back to the fountain, is a name. The name is Dr. Kulf. He's known as the father of artificial organs. While up at the University of Utah, he was inspired and became one of the inventors of the first permanent artificial heart, giving reference where this actual object came from. The purpose of this ready-made birdhouse is not to be sold in stores, but to give the viewer those reflections as if they were going to buy it. Why does this look the way that it does? Is this going to be large enough? And really to give them that deeper meaning of, is this essential human need going to fill the needs of a bird? That idea that you're creating an experience inside of you, not the physical object. You leave with those questions and ideas that you began to think of through this experience, and that emotional impact that it has on you simply by viewing it. And it does that by deviating from the icon that we have all known and come to expect. And it looks to elicit that emotional response by what the actual object is. So thanks for joining me. That is my artificial birdhouse, inspired by Marcel Duchamp.